Hi, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm Beth Dolan, the Dean of the College of Health, and I'm really pleased this evening that we have a panel of all alumni from Lehigh who will be sharing insights about their careers in business and health, or health and business, that intersection. Really interested in making sure that all the students at the College of Health understand the opportunity that is in the business space in health. Because about 20% of our GDP is in the health sector. So there are all kinds of things that people do in this area that you may not be aware of. And so we really want to make sure that that's something that folks can be exposed to, and also get a little advice, a little career advice, a little life advice from these amazing alumni. So I was just going to start out by asking everyone, all the panelists, to introduce themselves. You might just say your name and what's your current position. We can kind of start there, then we'll dig a little deeper as we go.
So Beth, I think we're going to start with me, right? So hi, I'm Kyle Baker. I am a class of 1991. I graduated from Lehigh with an accounting degree. And actually my son is in the class of 27. So hopefully he's listening or at the library studying. Right now I am Vice President of Finance for Merck Animal Health, which is a division of Merck & Co. So appreciate being able to come to Lehigh, even virtually. So I'm real happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Ross Bell. I graduated from Lehigh last year. I was the class of 23. I was in the business college and also in the College of Health. And currently I work at a company called Stern Investor Relations, and it's really the cross section of both biotech and finance. We help both private and public companies with corporate access, getting access to capital, and getting in front of investors. So very excited to be here. Thank you guys for coming.
I think I'm next. Hi, everybody. My name is Sean Keck Mulligan. I am class of 03. It feels like yesterday that I was at Lehigh, but sadly it was not. I am the head of strategy and operations for a small biotech in Boston called Immunogen. I spent a long time. I spent 19 years at Novartis Pharmaceuticals prior to coming to small biotech. My company, about 3 weeks ago, since the agenda went out, has been acquired by AbbVie. So I'm kind of between organizations at the moment, back to big pharma. But I am really happy to be here and looking forward to chatting with all you guys.
I think I'm next up. I'm Carson Snyder. I was part of the first graduating class from the College of Health. So I really just graduated from Lehigh less than a year ago, almost a full year. It's a little sad, but I am currently working at Johnson & Johnson on the MedTech side of things. I'm an associate deal desk analyst there, so working very heavily on the pricing side. I've been there almost 7 months, so kind of hitting a stride there, but super excited to be back talking with the community and hopefully shed some light on the job market and, what I went through, and also just give some advice to people who want to pursue the same path that I was lucky enough to find myself in.
So I think I'm up next. I can't remember the order, but we're down to the W's. So good evening, everyone. I'm Neil Walker. I graduated in '92, so Kyle, you edged me out as the eldest on the call. Can't believe I'm saying that. I started out in materials engineering. About 3 years in, finally realized I wasn't smart enough to be in materials engineering, and so transitioned to biology and graduated with a BA in biology in '92. I'm a board certified dermatologist, serial entrepreneur, and I'm currently the president, CEO, and chairman of Aclaris Therapeutics, which is a publicly traded biotech.
Great, and I think I'm up last. I'm Mike Wisga. I am currently the CFO of a biotech called Vectory Therapeutics, which is an Amsterdam-based company focused in ALS. I graduated from Lehigh in 2011 as a finance major. And prior to Vectory, I was the CFO of a company called Humanity Therapeutics, which is a public company also in the CNS space. And before that, I spent my career a decade plus in the world of healthcare investment banking. Nice to meet you all.
Okay, thank you guys, appreciate it. And I want to confirm that I'm older than you, Kyle, so. So but not by much, but you know.
I didn't
just
think we were gonna take the gloves off like that, but if we're going to, that'll be great.
Just so all the panelists feel comfortable. Anyway, what can you tell us, each of you or whoever wants to jump in, about your path from Lehigh to your current position? What has that been like? Where did you start? How does it compare to where you are now?
I'll start again if you don't,
Yeah,
since I'm the
great.
oldest, let the, age before beauty. So let me just tell you a little bit of background on what I work for. So I work for probably the largest company. I think J&J might be actually a little bit larger on the number of people, but so I work for Merck & Co. Inc. We are the third largest pharmaceutical company in the world based on market cap. If you think about it based on revenue, we're about number 2. Last year we sold $61 billion in pharmaceuticals. 6 of that was animal health, which is the division I'm in. We are the number 1 spenders of R&D in the industry. Last year we spent over $30 billion on R&D. Merck employs 77,000 people. The pharmaceutical industry itself employs 5 million over the world. It's a $1.6 billion industry. So there's lots of opportunity there. That's why I want to give you a little bit of context there. Look, not everybody is a large company person, right? There's some really awesome careers that we're going to hear about today that are in the smaller company side, but in the bigger company side, it offers you a lot of different opportunities, right? So at Merck, we have research, manufacturing, commercial areas. We have corporate glue. We have divisions. We had a consumer division at one point. Now we have an animal health division that I'm in. I basically started as an accountant 1, which is the lowest level you could start at the company, right out of Lehigh. So I've been at Merck for my entire career. I do worry about the boiling frog syndrome once in a while, think that I don't know anything but Merck. But certainly I've been able to have different opportunities all the way, and I've been really lucky to take different opportunities as they came, and people have offered me things just as I would get itchy for other jobs. I think early on in my career, I always expected to be at a different company, to try something different. I had interviewed over the years and done different things, but somehow I always got those different opportunities. And those 32 years I've been at Merck, it hasn't just been sitting in the same cubicle, putting my behind on the chair at 9 and getting up at 5. It's been going to different places. I got a chance to live in California for 4 years at and support our biotech locations out there. So that was a great opportunity for my family. I've been to over 17 different countries, innumerable states. So I've been to 5 continents. So the offerings that a large company like Merck has been great for me. I've been in the animal health division for 5 years. It's somewhat similar to the human health side, but it has some differences. But it also is important for world health and the health of people, whether it's the health of your family member is furry, or it's about the protein that needs to feed the world. So there was a lot of health issues there as well. But I've been in there about 5 years, and look, I hope at the end of the day that I'm able to walk out of Merck at my own time and say what a great thing, and that it's offered my family and me so much.
Yeah, I'd be happy to follow up on that. Maybe difficult to follow up on that, and obviously an incredible career from Kyle. But since I graduated last year, I'm pretty fresh into the new workforce, and my story is actually a little bit less traditional. And actually, I've worked for more companies than Kyle, believe it or not, at this point. So that's pretty interesting. I interned at a company called West Monroe, which I know is very popular at Lehigh. They have a healthcare and life sciences practice. And actually was planning on doing a full-time role there, but unfortunately the firm, like a lot of the consulting companies that I'm sure you seniors and juniors are familiar with, had a bit of a tougher year. So they actually rescinded almost 200 offers, and 5 of those offers being Lehigh students, about 3 months before we were supposed to start. So that was a little stressful. And if you're stressed, trust me, I know exactly how you're feeling. So given that news, I knew it was important to stay in healthcare and life sciences. So I actually was a recruitment consultant within life sciences, which I'm sure the panel's familiar with. They call a lot, but fortunately I was on the client partner side of things. So we would work with biotech and pharmaceutical companies, determine what their pipeline looks like and what operations were going on. And we would actually service them and recommend some of the talent that they would need for their teams and help build their teams for certain projects, which is really nice. And, fortunately that gave me the knowledge that I needed in biotech and life sciences to transition to a role, which I would highly recommend at a company, as I mentioned, called Stern Investor Relations. And as I mentioned earlier, we are really the crossroads between getting financing and being a biotech. And so what's really interesting and really unique about this industry is a lot of companies don't necessarily make any money, and they're losing money every single year. So who would ever invest in a company that doesn't make any money? That's where the role of investor relations and the role of financing is so important, is because you need to sell something that isn't necessarily making money, and you need to essentially bet on a company that you believe in the management team, you believe in the pipeline, you believe in the science. And that's why being an advisor in that role and really getting access to the best investors is such a unique opportunity. It's something I'd highly recommend. So in short, no plans really go according to plan. And so I'm, a living example of that. But again, stress is normal. So if you are stressing, I'm glad you're at the panel. And, besides myself, you're surrounded by some really well accomplished folks. So I really hope you'll get a lot out of this today.
I love that, Ross. I think that's I think both of you are actually a good introduction to my career path. So like I said, Kyle, I feel you. I graduated in 2003. I started at Novartis, and literally 19 years later, I still found myself there. So I started at a incredibly junior job in data management, it was called. I was basically part of a cost saving initiative. They laid off like 40 contractors and hired 5 college kids, and we did the work of 40 contractors. But it was an amazing opportunity to come in and learn about the fundamentals of how we collect data around our clinical trials. And so I graduated with a degree in molecular biology and a minor in psychology from Lehigh. I didn't mention that earlier, but I really, wanted to stay in the life sciences, and I really wanted to, but I found myself really not wanting to be in a lab. So I really kind of wanted to figure out where that next trajectory was taking me. So I did a year and a half in data management and was able to build on that and start entering the world of clinical trials. So not only how do we collect data, but how do we design protocols? How do we make sure that we are working with the multiple vendors that really help us to bring in different data to support the protocols? How do we make sure that we're writing, really writing the clinical study reports and things like that actually end up going for submission of our products? And ultimately have taken a career in clinical development and then broadened that into a career in program management and drug development. So my role in program management was to really bring a team together and make a cohesive team, a cohesive strategy, and teams from clinical, from the labs, from the preclinical space, from our regulatory space, from our commercial space. How do we make sure that we're developing a product that actually can make money one day? And bringing together all of these people and making sure that we're all following, kind of marching in the same order and following a career path. But regardless, following the same path for a strategy of a product. But regardless, it was very similar to Kyle, where I found myself, every few years, and when I was ready for my next challenge, Novartis really, it's an amazing thing about being in a large organization where you can continue to learn, you can continue to grow, you can continue to see new things and new spaces. 17 years in, I realized, okay, like I've seen a lot of development. I could keep on the development track, but now I'm going to go see medical affairs. So 4 days before COVID, and the world's shutting down, I decided to go see an even newer part of the organization and learn about like 5,000 new people. But I've spent the last 4 years in medical affairs roles and really learning about what it means to translate the clinical data into real life, and how what we do in a trial, it gets you so far, but it doesn't actually translate into a physician. So always, there's gaps, and how do you fill those gaps and make sure that we're developing scientific communication and your engagement strategy of what our data means in different markets. So that's been an amazing journey. And then, like I said, we learned the biotech space. I got the opportunity to come into this biotech space. Ross, you're totally right. You come in, it's a risk, and you come into this tiny little space and nobody's making any money. And especially when I'm not on the commercial side of the business, you're not on the P&L. You're not really a part of bringing in funding, and you're never going to be. So, really understanding that you're coming into a small business, you're wearing a lot of hats. I'm doing pretty much every job I've done over the last 19 years. I'm doing it in this role. But it's really fun, and it's a totally different way of working and a totally different way of thinking about the business. But it's really, like Kyle, you said, every couple of years, it's been a really interesting learning journey. And I feel like I'm still on my learning journey since Lehigh.
I can jump in if we're just, going in order here.
Don't go alphabetical. You got it.
I had a very kind of similar story to Ross in terms of journey. And I didn't mention earlier, I had a population health major and I had minors in entrepreneurship and communications. So really just all across the board. And I think it was a blessing and a curse because, you can market yourself in thousands of different ways, but at the end of the day, certain positions are looking for certain people with certain experience. So that was really my challenge of figuring out, like, I love 1,000 different things and I could go down all these different paths, but what's going to set me up for success down the line. So I was lucky enough. Well, first I got a job offer, and similar to Ross, the job market was not doing well. That was rescinded. Thought like the world was ending. It was my dream job at IQVIA. I was like, yes. And then, things happen. You graduate without a job, but you get back to the drawing board. You work on your network that you've spent so much time building all through college. And, I was lucky enough that J&J was willing to take a chance on a girl that doesn't have a business degree, that had minimal to none Excel experience. But, I really, really am blessed to be working on such a dynamic and very driven team at Johnson & Johnson. It's called the Deal Desk, and we work on every single med tech deal for joint reconstruction that comes through. So I've just kind of gotten a business degree in like 10 weeks. So it's been an incredible journey. I'm so happy that I've been set up in such a great position for a career down the line. And yeah.
So quick question for Carson. Do you think you'll follow Kyle's path and stay with J&J for a long time? Or do you have itchy feet already?
I mean, everyone says once you come to J&J, you do not want to leave. I think it's one thing to be said that they treat their employees really, really well. Also, just there's so many places you can go. I think very similar to Merck. Like, you could live so many different lives there and just touch so many different places. I am in no rush to leave. I've met just really incredible people and have built such a great network. So I hope I have a very, very long and fulfilling career at J&J. And I think where I am now, I think it's a nice preview into what's to come.
Great. I guess that's it's my turn now. So my path was quite circuitous, I have to say. So as I mentioned before, I started out in materials engineering, and then switched to biology because I decided I wanted to go to medical school. Once I completed that, I rolled into a derm residency. And about halfway through my final year of residency, started my first company, which was a CRO, which basically provides services and software to biotech and pharma companies. And we started that, and I started that with my twin brother actually, which was a cool experience. And once I finished residency, to my wife's chagrin, decided that I didn't want to practice dermatology full time. So I did about a day or two a week until about 2013, at which time I just retired from that because it got too difficult to do that and all the entrepreneurial items. Ended up then going to Wharton, got an MBA, not because I really wanted to spend more money on school, but it's hard when you're a physician and you're trying to do the business side, sometimes people pigeonhole you there. So, to me, it was a necessary thing just to round yourself out. And honestly, I like formal education. So, fortunately, that's the last school I went to. There was nothing else to go from there. From there, I basically founded about a dozen companies. I've raised over $1 billion for various enterprises in the life science space, tech, service. Have been really fortunate because you need a lot of luck in this business. It's high risk and high reward. But I've been very fortunate to have a number of exits, and then it becomes kind of self-fulfilling. It's a lot easier to raise money once you get your first one under your belt. And then so how I ended up at Aclaris is that was just kind of the next thing, right? We sold a company to Allergan, which is now part of AbbVie, in 2011, and then just rolled in with the same group of folks that we had started the last company with into a company called Aclaris. Worked with the same venture capitalists, founded that in 2012. And then, funny enough, took it public in 2015. And I really honestly had zero desire, less than zero, negative desire to go public. But the one cool thing was, just a couple other people have mentioned it, like the lifelong learning aspect is really important to me. And that was the decision there. And I remember the night before, we actually went out and went live, one of the VCs on our board said, "Do you really want to do this?" Because he just knew that I'm not really into the public side of things. And I said yes. And the reason was because I just wanted to learn about what made that side of the market tick, especially with mid cap companies. And let me tell you, you learn a lot. You basically want to go and tell whoever manages your money, if it's not yourself, to take all of your money out of the stock market when you see how it all really works. It is not for the faint of heart. But it's been a tremendous learning experience. I actually retired for personal reasons, just some family issues, in 22, handed off the reins, went to the chair role, and then had to come back in the beginning of this year on an interim CEO basis because the CEO just wasn't working out. But got a number of couple private companies that we started in the tech space going on the side, in addition to the day job, and I love it. I love being the kind of like controlling my own destiny, and getting to reap the rewards of my hard work, basically. So that's the benefit, but it is most days aren't fun on this side. There's a lot of failures.
Great. And from my side, so I graduated from Lehigh in 2011, as I said before, and I immediately went to Citigroup for their healthcare investment banking team. So I was lucky enough to be given the opportunity to join. Similar to Carson and Ross, markets were not great in 2011 either. So I lived through that with you, and the challenges of finding a job and having to network to get there. I think the biggest thing for Citigroup that really was the biggest opportunity was just learning about a variety of companies. I knew I didn't want to be in investment banking for my entire career, but I wanted to meet and learn about a variety of companies. So at Citi, you got to learn about med tech companies and biotech and pharma and healthcare services and really see the full scope of what they have to offer. And I think one of the coolest things when you're there is these deals that you're on and you're doing some of these M&A transactions, doing the financial modeling for, you get to read about in the Wall Street Journal, which is really cool as somebody who just graduated from college. I think the greatest thing about Lehigh was how prepared you, though, to be at a place like Citigroup. You know, the financial modeling and a lot of that work that you do, that you probably do in your finance and accounting courses, is really, really valuable for when you go and do some of these financial models. You look at some of the people who I was working with, you know, they went to other Ivy League schools, but they really didn't have that breadth and depth of knowledge that you had. So it's a huge leverage point when you first go in to be able to learn quickly. So after being at Citi for about 3 years, I started looking kind of internally about where I wanted to go next. So I guess between the group here, I was probably the job switcher of the group. You know, at a place like Citi, there's a very strong hierarchy. So I noticed that, you know, to kind of continue the ladder and become a calling officer, that was probably 7 to 10 years down the line. I started looking into some of the smaller firms, and that progression could be a lot quicker. So I found a company called Needham & Company, which is a smaller, more boutique healthcare investment banking firm. And, you know, they said, you know, within 2 years, you can be a calling officer. So it was just a great opportunity to just build my network and learn the other side of the business outside of being in the Excel and the financial models. Now you're learning about how to talk to different clients, how to ask questions, what are they looking for, what's the strategy behind the financing, and how to guide them the right way, either for IPO preparedness, for the public markets, for a follow-on offering, or just an M&A transaction, making sure you can guide them along the way. After being at Needham for about probably 8 or 9 years, again, I looked kind of internally about where I wanted to go next. I feel like I had taken a lot from Needham, but I always wanted to understand the operational side. And that was another area that I didn't have that strength. So I started looking for and waiting for the right opportunity to be a CFO. A company called Humanity Therapeutics was looking for a CFO. They were looking for somebody who had a strategic background like I did. And they're willing to take a risk on me, quite frankly, to find somebody who didn't have the operational skill set to build out for myself, selfishly, to round myself out. But they needed somebody who would help them think about the right investors. When should they be financing? How should they be financing? How much money should they be raising? And really provide value that way. So I was at Humanity for about 1.5 years. That company was sold largely to Johnson & Johnson. So while most people talk about exits, we talk about exciting exits. So ours was a more distressed exit. So like everybody's talked about with biotech, there's a lot of risk. Our company had challenging data, and we were unable to raise capital just based on the needs of the company. So we had to pivot towards a distress situation where we sell the company that way. So while everybody likes to talk about, hey, you know, we made billions of dollars, there's the other side of the coin where, you know, you're selling it for less than what you'd be hoping for. But thankfully, I was able to use those learnings to go to another company called Vectory Therapeutics, where I am now, which is an Amsterdam-based company. It's early stage, so we're still preclinical, so not in the clinic yet. And we recently raised, you know, 138 million US dollars. So in the current markets, which I'm sure everybody can attest to, it's very challenging to raise money, especially a Series A. So we're very lucky to be able to have some cash runway to execute and really move this asset forward into the clinic. So net, I've been able to learn kind of with each step along the way, take something and build out my skill set more. And I think that, you know, when each of you kind of go towards your own career path, there can be a benefit of switching jobs and kind of building out your career that way if you notice that at some point that there's not really that ability to take a next step forward.
That's awesome. Thank you. I mean, I love this really interesting combination. There's lots of overlaps, you know, for those of y'all who've shifted from large companies to startups, and then those who've sort of been in the startup space and those who stayed with large companies. I mean, I think that's really interesting. And it's all biotech and pharma, which is really, really quite interesting. So thank you. Thank you so much for that. And I wondered maybe we could take a second just for some definitions related to the startup space. So just for the people listening, exit. So, you know, if you watch Shark Tank, you might know, but or read the Wall Street Journal. But yeah, if you can define exit and if you can define Series A, that would be great. Anybody, maybe Mike.
Sure. So an exit is when you typically sell the company, or I guess you could liquidate the company or sell off the assets a different way, but typically an exit is a sale of the company for better or worse, as we've seen. And then a Series A is typically the first round of financing for a company. So usually a company is private. It can be referred to either there can be a seed round, which is usually the first money in, but sometimes there's a Series A, and then it kind of progresses from there, from Series A to Series B to Series C, and just kind of follow the alphabet down, and you'll get there. And then once you're a public company, they don't really call it a Series A, B, or C anymore. You're now a public company, and your financings are really defined by the type of raise that you might have done. So whether it's a confidentially marketed financing or public, and we can get into different definitions on a different day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's another traditionally venture capitalists will look at two ways to exit. One is what Michael just described, but the other is going public, right? Because that's when they're able to, at least the initial investors are able to get out, and basically trade off. There's also another kind of middle ground of financing called the crossover round, which if your and this is just going to sound silly, but if your valuation isn't high enough, you want to go into a crossover round to juice the valuation so that when you go out in the public offering, your share price is higher. And those guys also form the basis of the initial support. So it keeps the stock going up. If you don't have good crossover support, you're kind of doomed. And that's also the case if you don't have solid Series A or B or C investors and you try to go public, those never do well.
Really interesting. Yeah, thanks you guys. So I want to go out broader a little bit and think about the larger ecosystem of health and healthcare and the major challenges that we're facing there today. And again, everybody doesn't have to answer, but you're very welcome to. We'd love you to. What do you think of as maybe top two kind of problems or challenges in the health and healthcare today from where you sit? So it may not be, it's not the results of a national poll. It's the results of asking one person from their standpoint. And so just what do you see as big problems that interest you, I guess, might be a way to add to that.
So since I haven't spoken a while ago, I'll start again in the beginning, if that's okay. Look, I think what you'll find most challenging, and you can't really do this, like whenever you talk about health or healthcare or anything else, you talk about affordability, right? I think that's the economics around healthcare, whether it's pricing, right? So certainly people are sensitive around pricing of pharmaceuticals and things like that. The cost structure, right? It takes over $1 billion to bring a product to market right now. We still have low success rates, especially when you talk about monoclonal antibodies, and small molecule rates are still pretty low. Still over a 90% fail rate from candidate identification. So a lot goes into that. And then certainly it doesn't help with the public perception of the companies that we work for or the industries that we're in, the vaccine hesitancy, some of the distrust that's put out there around that. Also, as medicine goes, and so since I'm been in this a long time, and I mentioned this to you, Beth, earlier today, is that like if you look at when I started in the industry, things that the pharmaceuticals and companies were solving were things like, right, statins were starting right around the early 90s. That was a big thing. We were really killing it on stuffy noses and runny noses with Zyrtec and Claritin. Right, and then certainly for all our overeating, there was a lot of heartburn with Prilosec and Zegrid and Prevacid, and so for those are the big three things that we were doing back then, and it did pretty well. But if you look at it today, right, so Merck has the #1 selling product in the world. That's Keytruda, which is immuno-oncology, and it's approved in over 18 different tumor types, 45 different indications. So you take one product and you think about what it takes to bring all those indications to market. So one product is not one clinical trial. It has, we're still in 1,500 clinical trials. A lot of those are, standalone and in combination therapies. It costs a lot of money to do those things, right? We're also seeing like the GLP-1s with diabetes, and now you're seeing that with weight management as well. That's certainly a strain on the process there. And then when you get further on, like what's that next generation? So as I was trying to say, we started off when I was younger, we were solving easier things, and things are getting harder to solve. And the great news is that we're getting closer to that. Like, again, I'll go back to like an HPV. Is you look at Gardasil, another Merck product, you're preventing cervical cancer. So if you've had an HPV vaccine, you're 90% less likely to get cervical cancer than someone who hasn't. So you're starting to see the real advent of some of these management things, but we still have so far to go. How do you get to neurology, like Parkinson's disease? You know, Michael, you're an ALS, right? Does ALS then help us with Huntington's disease? And so how do you think about that? That's the new frontier if you can get those neurological things done. Gene therapies out there, all those different mechanisms. There's so much opportunity. So again, I can't wait to see what Carson and Ross contribute in the next 20 years, 30 years like me, to hear what they're talking about. But I assume the industry has so much opportunity to do. So as much as there's challenging there about the cost structure and economics, we really got to figure out how to keep the engine going, because we've been really successful over the last, at least over my career, in really improving society and medical health for all.
Awesome. Anybody else want to jump in? And then we have 3 questions. So, but let's take one more on the sort of big picture, or from where you're sitting, and then we'll go to questions. Yeah.
So from where I'm sitting, I think, so I love, Kyle, you summarized really nicely, but I think that the one thing to add on where I'm sitting, so I work on the oncology space. So I've been in oncology for most of my career. And right now the product that I'm supporting is an antibody drug conjugate. It's a new technology. And it is in a very, very rare, very late stage indication of ovarian cancer. But it's done amazing things for the patients in the US since it's launched. It's had an incredible launch. It's been an amazing to be part of, because the need for it has been so real. There hasn't been a product released in late stage ovarian cancer in over 10 years. And it's just been incredible to really watch the reaction for patients that have been able to get access. But access in itself is a huge issue. And so this is something where, like biotech in itself, it's an amazing place to be from an innovation, from flexibility. But right now, when you're at the point of, okay, we want to get this drug to patient, we have people that are waiting. Right now, it's been a really interesting exercise over the course of the last year of my life to watch the rest of the world, where the drug is not approved and we're working on it, but we don't even have a business that exists in Europe. We don't have business entities. And Kyle, I'm looking at you, because you're like, you have to actually have a place where you can hire people, and you have to have a business that sits there and like be able to like hire a person that can go out and talk to somebody. And it is really, it's heartbreaking when you're getting these requests. And so part of my team is the medical information team that supports really like the call center, the call centers that are really the face of the organization to so many patients and physicians. And we get calls every day saying, you know, how do I get access to your therapy? And really at the end of the day, like our access is through trials in a lot of the rest of the world, but just getting the product to market faster. It's amazing, because Kyle, you just gave so many great statistics of how much it costs, and like, you know, the public perception of, oh, big pharma and all the money, but it costs so much, and the amount of work that it actually can take, and the speed that we can go as a small biotech to now get this amazing product to market in Europe is like, I mean, it will be molasses if we were not coming into this AbbVie model right now. So this AbbVie model coming into this big pharma model, there is an amazing purpose for big pharma in life. And it is to have an established structure in all of these communities and really ready to like be the engine that gets this drug to patients. Like we can do so many things so much faster with an established product. And it's really kind of amazing right now to be listening and just have the opportunity to like bring this compound that has just, you know, been like a miracle for so many people, and then have it be part of, you know, an engine that might actually get it to people faster.
Right. And so if I could jump in again, because I think, Sean, what you're saying is so great, because like, look, people don't even understand where do you have infusion centers, you know, what do they consider? Like, you look, I won't get political, but you look at the IRA, right? What they consider as far as innovation and things like that, right? So if we talk about a subcutaneous Keytruda versus an IV related, they don't think that's innovation, but it is the innovation for the person who gets the shot versus sitting in infusion centers and the costs that go around that for 30 minutes, 3 times, once every 3 weeks. So yeah, you're right. There's a lot of opportunity there, and you do need that network. And governments are weary, right? US is a different model than the rest of the world. So every time you try and go in a different country, that costs them money. So right, remember what was it, Biogen a few years ago when they were coming out with the Alzheimer's product, that was terrifying for a lot of countries around the world as we have an aging population and the economics around that. Those are, especially when you see things, especially for an aging population, that will go right into like a US Medicare or something like that. That puts a lot of strain on the system.
Yeah.
And Beth, if I could just add one
Yeah.
thing, more of a generic comment, this builds a little bit on what Kyle alluded to in his first comments. To me, the biggest problem affecting the entirety of the healthcare system and the continuum through the pharmaceutical industry is the third parties that add very limited, I would say, questionable value, but take a disproportionate amount of the pie. And that's going on right now with PBMs. It's going on with physicians who, dermatology is easy. It's probably one of the easiest specialties to practice. And I would say 95% of my colleagues want to quit. And it's because each year there's somebody else with their hand out saying, give me part of the money you made. And, to the point that Sean made and Kyle made, all these things cost money. It costs a lot of money to go to school and train and provide all these services. And the end result is with those third parties kind of taking too much, it makes the whole system very clunky.
Right. And we're again, my bias is towards the industry, of course, but we're the risk takers, right? And we are the innovators, right? And so, yeah, we should disproportionately benefit from that. We're also the reinvestors, right? So we bring all that back, as Sean said, once you get that product approved, the time you're not in country, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, right? So every day is a lost opportunity because Keytruda, which sold $25 billion last year, which is a sad event in itself because that means that many people had cancer and needed that product. But come 2030, Merck will make zero from that product, right? And so that's the reality of our industry.
Yeah, it's true.
Really, really interesting and I think sobering. It's a perspective you don't hear on the news. You have to talk to people who are living it. So really appreciate that. So we have some questions from the folks listening. So we'll start off with one. What specific skills and qualifications do you look for when hiring entry-level professionals in population health and pharmaceutical business roles? And are there any additional certifications or training programs that can help enhance one's candidacy? Really looking for pragmatic advice there.
First, we check to make sure you're not from Lafayette, right? Let's get a little laughter there. But once you're from Lehigh, you're smart enough to do anything. So we'll check that off the list. For me, I'll just give one credit, then I'll let everybody else speak. But I love the intellectual curiosity. If you can show example of being intellectually curious, you're going to do really well. So those interpersonal skills, that intellectual curiosity, make people like you. If people like you, you're going to do much better with everything. You're going to influence and everything else. I'm sure most people around the table here, it's all about how do you influence others, especially when you're in a company of 77,000 people. If you want to have impact, you got to figure that part out. So right away, at least for me, I'm not one that's going to quiz you on accounting principles or financial principles or anything else. I see your Lehigh degree. I know you're smart enough. Now it's about, who are you? Will I like working with that person and so forth. So, bring your best self at that meeting, be inquisitive, make sure you're prepared, ask questions, show that little bright spark that you have. And I think you'll do well in those interviews.
I
Anybody else?
agree. It's always the intangibles, right? Like it's not, everybody always thinks You know, it's like you don't get the textbook answer that, oh, well, if I went to Harvard and I have 10 degrees and you know, those people I run from. But you know, if you're just a good person and you express a willingness to learn and do whatever it takes because it is an entry level position, those are always the people that stand the test of time. And it's hard to get your head around that. Like then you say, well, am I a good person? Am I a lifelong learner? But that's literally it's as simple as that.
Great.
I think for
Thank you.
me, I would say like, I mean, I'm echoing these guys, but the really the ability to collaborate as well. I mean, I think agree being a good person and being somebody that has interpersonal skills, but you know, for me, one of my old bosses used to say, "Are you going to pick up the phone? You know, are you going to be the one that like walks down the hall?" And you know, it's not just about, oh, I sent an email and that person didn't get back to me. Like, no, I sent the email, I made the phone call, I walked to their office, I, you know, banged down their door and I got the answer, you know, and I think somebody who really has the ability to show the initiative that, you know, they understand how to you know, when something's a priority and they can act on it. I think is a really good thing. And I think, you know, like you guys said, it really the ability to learn. I mean, I think I'm also in the lifelong learning camp. You know, I loved going back to grad school and I love just continuing to learn throughout my career. So somebody who really wants to just continue to do that in our space, I mean, I never have no two of my days are the same. So, you know, I think somebody who's willing to kind of bend to that and continue learning with me, I think is part of my journey.
Yeah, I can also add another point is just being assertive. And even if you feel super not confident or you don't think you're qualified for a role, just fake it. And you know, when I started at J&J, I mean, really just right off the bat, you know, they just expect you, kind of like what Sean's saying, like pick up the phone. You got into this job, okay, now do it. Like I have to pick up the phone and talk to people who have 20, 30 plus years of experience in the medical device business and who have such a breadth of knowledge that, you know, it's going to take me a while to reach. But, you know, I have to be able to hold a conversation and, you know, hold my ground when I'm trying to get a deal through. So I think just bringing yourself to the table and being confident in who you are and what you can bring is super important because, you know, at the end of the day, there's 100 resumes coming in for a job. Most of them are going to look the same. So if you can be the person that stands out and leaves the interview and they're like, this person seems like they could bring like a really good vibe. They seem like sure of themselves. I promise you, like that will definitely make a difference.
Great advice. So I'm going to switch to another question. So this is kind of a switching back to the startup world and going public. So what are some of the things driving successful IPOs currently? Is it mainly marketing muscle?
I would say that right now the IPO market's really challenging, quite frankly. There's been 7 or 8 biotech IPOs this year. In terms of performance, it's been very much a mixed bag. So I think going to Neil's point from earlier, the biggest thing you can do to set yourself up for success is have a crossover round. Then you at least know where the round should price in terms of when you try to do your round, usually you end up with a range on the cover of the S1, which is a filing you do as part of your SEC filing to become a public company. So when you know where you're going to end up from a pricing point, it makes it a little bit easier to go out there when you know that your book or the syndicate that you're putting together of investors is there to support you. In terms of the ones that have been successful versus not, really the biggest things that they have going for them is where they are in the clinic. The ones that are further along are considered more de-risked, so there's less concern about how they perform in the public markets. If you look at a company like Metagenomi, which went public, it's a preclinical company, they did have post money for their last round of about 800 million. They went public with a pre-money of about 450. Why did they get hit so hard? They're preclinical, so there's a lot of risk. They didn't do a crossover round. It's a challenging market when you go in there and you don't have, once again, a de-risked, you're in a novel area, and you have something that's differentiated. And once again, you need to have the management team to support it in the public markets as well. So I think those are the biggest characteristics of ones that are successful versus ones that aren't. There really isn't overall an area that won't perform well in the markets. I think people have talked about oncology becoming more and more out of favor, but then you look at a company like CG Oncology, which has done incredible in the public markets. Outside of being an infectious disease, you should be okay.
That's great. All right.
Yeah, I would just pile on there and say that it's a very nuanced question because it depends where over what time frame are you measuring success? The first quarter through the lockup, over 10 years. There's lots of companies that go up, down, and sideways for 10 years, then find the golden goose and then rocket, well after all the original investors have long since sold out of the position. So it's, some of the things that have already been mentioned, obviously experienced team and a team that can tell the story and can really understand how to be in a dogfight, because buy side investors on the public side make very quick decisions. If you go out and try to raise dough privately, it's 6-9 months of constant just proctology like diligence. In the public side, you go meet somebody in a week, they're throwing $20 million in your company. Like it's just, and to the downside, when things aren't going so well, your phone's getting lit up, at all hours of the day. And so it's a very nuanced relationship sort of thing. And there's so many factors, like all things being equal with the asset, whether it's in a hot space, what your investor base look like, timing and luck. If you went out, part of the reason the market's terrible now is because in 21 and 22, and there's a dynamic out there where private investors now are becoming so concentrated, the funds are getting huge. So that means they have to put more and more money to work. If they had 500 million assets under management, now they have $1 billion. Now, instead of writing a $20 million check, they got to write a $50 million check. So what does that mean? The post money goes up. So if the post money goes up, your options are limited in a trade sale, then you're almost forced to go public. And so companies that had no business, zero business going public in 21 and 22 with like horribly early stage assets, everybody just kept buying into that, right? Because the crossover guys, everybody was making money until they weren't. And then when they weren't, the funniest thing was the buy side guys who funded these very companies were like, well, I think the board should be responsible and return the capital to the shareholders. I mean, it's just, there's a cyclicality to all this where things, and this was alluded to before, where platforms go in and out of favor, oncology in and out of favor, like topical derms totally out of favor because gross to nets are terrible. So even if you have like a cure for a skin condition, it's impossible to commercialize. And because basically you give 80 cents of every dollar away. So there's just so many, when we went public was the week that Hillary Clinton sent out that tweet in 2015. And, all of a sudden your price target went down by 5 points, right? So it's a really difficult, there's some things you just shouldn't do, like, but trying to figure out what you should do is very, very nuanced.
Well, there's a follow-up, which, so will the IPO market get back to where it was pre-COVID?
So my opinion, like what has to happen, and I work also for 2 venture funds, big venture funds as a venture partner. So I see a lot of this. The private company valuations have to reset. They have not reset yet. I cannot tell you how many companies I'm seeing with post-money valuations of north of 200, 300, 400 million. I mean, it's again, as the market keeps building up, people are like, oh, well, now I got to push that company out. So it just becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. So that, to me, that has to reset so that the public market can regain footing again.
Yeah. I'd like to add to, just from a perspective of someone who graduated last year. I would say, in my opinion, just kind of what we're seeing, there's really 2 things, and I think Michael touched on this, that, investors are looking for. One is good data. And I think that's a really important thing to understand. If going into an interview for pharma, biotech, going into the space is the drug development process kind of drives our entire industry. So understanding that things start in the lab and then ultimately, end in hospitals or shelves and whatever, what comes in between there, preclinical, clinical, and then go into regulatory and commercial. So really understanding that. So to that point, good data and good management. People like, investors watch people like Dr. Walker and see where he's starting a new company. He obviously has, a history of success. Those are, in my opinion, the most important things. But I think on a similar note, what, the point that I wanted to make is it's really such an exciting time to enter biotech and to enter this space. Although, we had a bit of a pessimistic talk here about IPO, I really think it is such an exciting time. Michael, I'm sure you would agree with this, that a lot of people are, bullish that interest rates are going to come down. And for an environment like biotech where financing is really everything, it's so important. And it really stimulates so much business. Obviously, there's AI going on, which obviously gets talked about, it's kind of a buzzword, but at the end of the day, it could obviously streamline drug discovery and just make many more new things possible. And so it is such an exciting time. There's loss of exclusivity within the next 10 years. That's really going to have a huge impact on everything. And ultimately, it wasn't, biotech 2023, 2022 was not great. So there's a lot of dry powder out there and a lot of people that need to invest in, companies, deploy the capital. And, if you are thinking about going into this industry, I really would recommend it. I think it's such an exciting time to be in such an innovative industry.
That's great. That's great. So we have another question and we're getting low on time. But I want to make sure to get this one in. I think it's a really important question. Can you share insights into current industry trends and emerging areas of growth within population health and pharmaceutical, or the pharmaceutical business? And how can aspiring professionals stay informed and prepare for these developments? So where are we headed and how can you be informed about that ride, basically? It's a hard question, but I think a really smart one.
I think you go to number one, the easiest thing to go to conferences. Like, if you go to any local big city, Philly, New York, whatever, Boston, San Fran in particular, anywhere that's like a biotech hub will definitely have life science organizations that are advocacy groups, and they're great at putting on networking events that have, people who've been there, done that, give presentations and talk and just talk about all those trends. And then probably the other resource would be stuff that maybe Ross and his group like participate in producing, like a lot of these advisory shops or banks will produce notes and just read them. I mean, I get fact set delivered to my email every day, and it's like it's overwhelming because they'll literally send you like 300 emails in a day, but you just pick and choose and just read. Like that's the best thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, look at your 10Ks, right? So 10Ks, their pipelines are out there. Look at some of the bigger company websites. They'll tell you what their pipeline's doing. So you'll see some trends there as well. So again, depends on how much you want to go out and beat the bushes yourself, but there's certainly a lot of data out there where the industries are trending towards.
Great.
And
Yeah,
And
go
yeah,
ahead.
Beth, sorry to interrupt. I do just want to mention one more thing because this was something that kind of was a revelation. I'm sure everyone on the panel would agree. When I was in college, I kind of bucketed both healthcare and life sciences into one big umbrella as healthcare. And I actually think, being in the industry, they're two very different businesses and very different industries. I do think biotech and pharma are, very different than health insurance, health provider. So I think, spending some time and researching what you really want. If, you want to be close to the science, you want to be close to the patients, that's just going to be a really important distinction as you kind of go into the workforce. So that's something I'd always recommend taking a look at.
I think that's great. And I think it sort of starts us off on kind of a final round here, which is advice. Like, what advice would you give to our students who are, maybe, I know we even have first years on the call, but all the way to seniors, who are graduating soon. I think we've had bits of advice sprinkled all the way through, but do you have any sort of culminating advice you want to share?
I would say, especially in the healthcare space, make sure you stay true to a company that aligns with your values and aligns with your mission, because that really comes through with your work. Finding a place where you feel passionate about what you're doing, because at the end of the day, I know that, you know, I may feel removed from the patients, you know, sitting at my desk, but I know at the end of the day, like that's where every product I'm working on is going, and that's what, you know, drives me to get up every day. So I think just trying to find that home where you feel motivated to get up and make a difference and continue making a difference. And that's just so prevalent in the healthcare industry already. That's really my advice, is just look around for that. Clearly, there's so many options in the healthcare space. There's so many companies that can be overwhelming. But, you know, reading up on them, following companies on LinkedIn, that's a huge thing of what I did, seeing what their big news is. You will start to see a pattern of what really intrigues you and, you know, is pulling towards you, and like follow that.
Great.
I would say network like crazy.
A lot of nodding. So yeah.
Yep. You know, couple of things. One, you're super lucky you went to Lehigh. To Michael's point, you're going to be very prepared for the world, so have confidence in that. You're also super lucky because you're in this hotbed of biotech, pharmaceuticals, and healthcare in this New York, New Jersey, Boston, this East Coast area. And if you want to go further, not like I spent 4 years living in Palo Alto, pretty nice. So out in Silicon Valley is pretty nice too. So think about that. But again, look for your, to Carson's point, look for something you like. When you like something, you perform better. It's a definite truth. If you love what you do, it shows in your work. If you don't love what you do, it shows in your work. So find something you like, find the mission you like. This is a great career to be in healthcare. Every aspect, all the people, whether you're working in clinical trials, whether you're working in startup companies, whether you're working in finance, you do help drive the mission, and we really are there to help people. So show that empathy, show that integrity, and you'll make the right decisions all along your career opportunity. And don't limit yourself to strictly your degree that's on your diploma. You know, once you get in the door, learn as much as you can. I mean, I'm never going to be a bench scientist or a PhD, but I could do a lot in the business just because I came from Lehigh and I have an accounting degree, and I've learned so much over the years. So don't limit yourself. Do everything you can to have an impact every day.
And don't be above the first job. I think that's the thing, right? Like, just like take the first job. You can do anything for a year, and you take it and you learn and you can grow on it. And it really, you know, take every opportunity to learn, and just don't be above the first job. Like, it's okay.
It's great advice. Anybody else want to throw in some advice here at the
I
end?
would definitely cannot emphasize enough about networking. Network with your neighbors, your friends' parents, your professors, people on LinkedIn, like just anyone. That network is really what helped me get my job at J&J. And I continue to use that network even once I'm in a job. Like, it doesn't just stop when you get a job. Keep networking. That was the biggest asset in my job process, and I know will continue to be down the line in the career. And also, once you form those networks, I remember the best part about getting my job was going down that list of probably 70 contacts I made and letting them know where I ended up. And they were so happy for me. And I know that those connections will continue down my career. So, like, cannot emphasize enough how important and rewarding, and they will help.
And Carson, to your point, it's like, it's not even just to get a job, but also to be good at the jobs that you are in. Like, I mean, I think for some of the jobs that I've taken, like I said, I learned a completely new space in COVID, like behind a screen, and, you know, being able to reach out to people to understand, like to learn what they do and just ask questions is just a skill. And it's something that, you know, people like to talk about what they do. You know, look at us. So like, so it's okay, you know, just go and have that conversation, have that cup of coffee, because, you know, you never know what you're going to learn and where that could lead you even years from now.
I mean, it probably seems very obvious, but when we get off this call, if somebody is speaking now to the students in the audience, if somebody is interesting to you, or even the people on the panel, but y'all know, find them on LinkedIn. Do you know what I mean? Follow them, drop them a note and say, hey, that was really interesting or something. Like, don't wait. Now's a good time. Yeah. All right. Anybody else have any final words? Uh-oh, I guess we're done. So, okay. That's the golden hook. They're playing the song. So, thank you guys to the panelists. Thank you so much for taking your time and sharing your expertise with us. We have, and I also want to thank the audience for your questions. They were great questions, led to good discussion. And we've recorded this. And so, you know, if you've seen it and you have a friend who's like, man, I wish that friend had seen this, we have a recording. We'd be happy to share. So again, thank you so much to our Lehigh alums. Y'all are amazing. It never fails to impress how amazing Lehigh alums are and how generous with each other, how much you guys want everyone to succeed, who's a fellow Mountain Hawk, I guess. So anyway, thank you. Thank you so much. Really great to see everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.